Our new season of Aliens Explored continues as we travel back in time to 218 BC, where Titus Livius recorded the reporting of a number of what religiously inclined people were inclined to call portents. Among the many strange events listed was the report of phantom ships seen gleaming in the sky by people for whom human flight was still regarded as an impossibility. Join us on Aliens Explored as we travel back to ancient Rome. This episode is dedicated to our explorer of the week, Toby Fomes. Check out our Patreon on patreon.com/Aliens Explored to find a tier that's right for you.
Aliens Explored is a weekly podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a sceptical perspective whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it?
Welcome back, listeners, to Aliens Explored, your weekly podcast where we look at UAPs, UFOs, the people behind them, historical events, speculative events, and all manner of other things in between and sideways on. I am one of your hosts, Stu Jackson.
And I'm your other host, Neil Kelly.
How are you doing, Neil?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
It's good to be back, isn't it? So this is our second episode back from our sabbatical. But of course we had the amazing Lisa with us last time. So we didn't get our usual chance to have a catch-up because it has been a while. I mean, we're recording this straight on the back of that one. We just said goodbye to Lisa.
Of course, yeah.
But obviously for our listeners, the week has passed. But no, I mean, at least it was absolutely brilliant. But so we haven't talked on air about how your holidays were, mate.
Yeah, they were great. I mean, I worked for most of them. I had Christmas Day and Boxing Day off. Mm-hmm. And I had New Year's Eve off. I was into work on New Year's Day with a lot of people who were very green around the gills. They looked like they were about to throw up just before curtain up. But
you work with youngsters, don't you? I think it's fair to say.
I do work with youngsters. You know, they're adults, but they're much younger. They're 40 years younger than me, so there's quite an age gap. You know, they're younger than my children. They are. Yeah. In fact, one of them was saying she was talking about her gran and realised that I'm older than her gran. So, yeah.
So you decided not to ask her out on a date? No, that would
you
are married.
That would be really creepy, wouldn't it?
It would.
So how were your holidays? You were Father Christmasing, weren't you?
I was eventful. So I had a bit of a health issue sort of going into that job. I got diagnosed with high blood pressure, and I actually had a small cardiac event in the middle of the grotto on one session. But I'm fine, listeners.
That would have been an unforgettable moment for a child, wouldn't it, if it had been a major cardiac event?
Well, do you know what? I mean, I know you and I have sort of joked and laughed about this with our really dark sense of humour before, about the Father Christmas who pretends to be asleep when the children come in to see him. And Yeah. So
and then won't wake up.
He can't wake up. And yeah. Definitely. That thought did cross my mind at the time. That what was going to happen to me? Shouldn't have laughed so much in the past about it. But no, it was great. It was a great job. It's great to get back, seeing actual families. Just still a bit of trepidation on my part where COVID's concerned. I've got to be honest. But we've still got 1,000 people a week dying of it here in the UK. It's not gone away. But, people just have to die with it now. That's the... Sorry, live with it, we're told, but,
Live with it or die with it.
We have actually... will just have to die with it.
Boris Johnson's herd immunity policy has become policy, hasn't it? Yeah.
Let's not get on about that prick. But anyway, yes. And then just after that, had a nice sort of week off. Then I had a significant birthday earlier in the month. Got a lovely card from you. Thank you very much.
Oh, you got it. Good.
I know I never mentioned that I received your card. I'm so sorry. I did mean to, but it did arrive.
It was an image that I've been saving for you. I thought, Stu will like this one. But...
Yeah, it was very apropos, very sci-fi, Dalek related. Yes. I turned 50. That was a bit of a milestone for me. More than I expected. I mean, turning 40 didn't bother me. Turning 30, no, barely a blink. But there was something about turning 50. So I went full on middle-aged and had 2 dates in a row, each with women in their 20s. Proper midlife crisis. Midlife. I mean, I bought a motorbike not that long ago, Neil. I don't know how much more midlife crisis I can get.
Motorbike, teenage
I'm a walking
girls,
stereotype.
20s, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I've had a very pleasant time. Lots of fun, and really glad to be getting back into this with you. Really glad.
It's I've missed it. Missed it. I mean, when we took our break, we didn't really know how long of a break it was going to be, did we? Or if that was it, that was the end of it.
I think we both agreed, that it wasn't going to be the end, but nor were we going to set a specific date as to when we came back. I mean, we were both, I think our fuel tanks were running a bit low at the time, weren't they?
I think they were, yeah.
But here we are, refreshed, recharged, heart attacked, and midlife crisis stop. Ready for you, listeners.
Yeah.
And immediately this one, we're going back in time, back into the mists of time. We are going back 2,300 years. Almost. Back to 218 BC and Rome. This chap. Now I've been calling him Levi, which I think it's Livy.
I think it's Livius,
the one from the Bible.
It's Titus Livius, and then in brackets Livy, Livy. I would pronounce that.
You had the Book of Levi in the Bible, and that's where I've
Levi.
Confused, I think. Yeah. So Livy, who was a social commentator, basically. That's my understanding. Does that gel with yours?
Insofar as I have an understanding, yeah. I suppose I'm going to admit to the limits of my research. Yeah, but I think a social
certainly
commentator.
A writer. He wasn't from Rome originally, but he came to Rome and he wrote about Rome a lot, and specifically in what we're referring to today, he wrote Ab Urbe Condita. Anybody who actually speaks Latin, apologies for my pronunciations there, but it translates as the history of Rome.
Is there a correct pronunciation for Latin? I thought no one's ever really heard it. We just make the best fist of it we can, don't we? We just say it as we. It's not like English or French where you know how to pronounce certain things. You just say it as you see it.
Get talking about Latin and everything like that, my head instantly goes to that scene from Monty Python's Life of Brian. He was called Romanus, he goes to the house. No, it means Romans go home. No, it doesn't.
Yeah. Conjugate the verb. I can understand that, but
go. Yes.
But it's not a spoken language. It's no one. You would never need. Well, actually, I think it is in. I gather that sometimes university academics, when meeting each other from different parts of the world, might find that the only language they have in common is Latin. Especially if they've had a classical education, but for us mere mortals, we'd have to just use whatever we can find.
I think it's a lingua franca of education. Academia.
I don't know. I mean, I can imagine that there are academics, especially if they've studied the classics, whose knowledge of Latin is sufficient to have an in-depth conversation. I don't believe that, for instance, our former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who likes to say things in Latin, I think what he does is the extent of his Latin. He can occasionally think of some non sequitur to come up with a bit like Del Boy in Only Fools and Horses with his French, who just suddenly
mange
says mange tu, Rodney, mange tu, après moi le déluge. That's how Boris Johnson uses Latin, and his admirers remark on how clever he is. What a clever man! But
he uses it to be a sanctimonious elitist prick, to be honest.
Yeah,
but, that's about
the best use of Latin. I think it's the only use of Latin. It's not. It's a dead language, and I think also. I mean, one of the things that came out when the Bible was first translated into English by, what was his name? John. It was in the time of Henry VIII.
Oh, it's been translated and retranslated and...
Yeah, but this was a guy who translated it into English, an accessible version, and he found that a lot of the Latin had been, or would have been translated into Latin, they had some very loose translations of things to their advantage.
That's always happened with the Bible. But do you know what? We've done our usual thing. Straight in. Second episode back after a break. And we've gone on this massive tangent.
Yeah. Because we're talking about something that was written in Latin by a Roman and...
yes.
And how do... I think that's the first question you have to ask when you say, well, this according to this text that was written in Latin... It talks about phantom ships had been seen gleaming in the sky. Well,
yes.
Yeah. So, what were his exact words? How is that exactly translated?
I can tell you, he said. So, yeah, you're absolutely right, and this is what we're here to talk about. So, poor listeners have been putting up with this. We haven't even told them why we're here. So, yes, Levi wrote in this Ab Urbe Condita, the history of Rome, that about phantom ships had been seen gleaming in the sky. Word perfect there, Neil. Or has he put it, Vanadium specium decalo actualcise.
Yeah, and... my Latin is such a...
Phantom ships gleaming in the sky. I mean, what more accurate UFO description can you possibly get?
Well, in his History of Rome, Book 21, Chapter 6.2, I mean, the text that it comes from, Liv 2162, not 6.2, Chapter 62, it prefaces it by saying, in Rome or near it, many prodigies occurred that winter, or, as often happens when men's thoughts are once turned upon religion, many were reported and too easily credited. And then he gives a whole list of portents, of which phantom ships gleaming in the sky was just one.
And that's what he means by prodigies, is portents or signs being seen of, either calamity coming or a good harvest or things like that. Yeah. He lists out a load of weird shit that's been seen.
Was it a Blackadder or a Monty Python where they're accusing someone of witchcraft and she turned me into a newt, and they all look at him. He said, "Well, I got better."
Yeah,
and I was trying to think, was it all these portents, and in Dorchester it rained phlegm, and all these things that people have just made up,
So I'm going to ask the question, because phantom ships gleaming in the sky sounds so much like a UFO that we would recognize today as a UFO.
Well, not if it was a ship with sails and oars like that, they would recognize a ship.
Well, I'm guessing not, but
a phantom ship, a funny shaped cloud,
gleaming,
an object like Lisa saw. There's a light that we couldn't explain.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's some kind of UAP, or that someone just claimed that they saw it.
Well, this is the crux of the argument against, because Livy is calling the credibility of these witnesses into question by the way he puts it.
Yeah,
but isn't that really an analogy for modern day UFO sightings? People say, "Oh, yeah, I saw a UFO." Yeah, you must have imagined it. And that's it. They get dismissed so easily because people can't or don't want to accept that there are things beyond understanding. Why would Livy be any different?
But also that there are people making wild, outlandish claims who are they're off their rockers. They're talking, they're babbling, they're insane, and they have to be filtered out. Some of the portents were that a freeborn infant of 6 months had cried triumph in the provision market, that in the cattle market an ox had climbed of its own accord to the third story of a house, and then, alarmed by the outcry of the occupants, had thrown itself down. Then phantom ships, that the Temple of Hope in the provision market had been struck by lightning. Okay, that could happen.
Yeah.
That in Lanuvium, a slain victim had stirred. Okay, not as dead as they thought. And a raven had flown down into Juno's temple and alighted on her very couch. Yeah, that can happen. That in the district of Amiternum, in many places, apparitions of men in shining raiment had appeared in the distance, but had not drawn near to anyone. Okay. A shower of pebbles.
Yes, that happens.
A wolf had snatched a sentry's sword from its scabbard and run off with it.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Yeah. But these are all seen as, and they are given equal weight to the phantom ships in the sky.
Well, and that's it. So there is a long list of things that are perfectly reasonable and rational. So is it the point then that he is calling them being portents into question rather than their possibility?
I mean, the thing with portents is it doesn't have to actually be something supernatural, does it? That if someone's in the right frame of mind and they've been told to look out for a sign that something's going to happen, if they see a bird drop dead out of the sky, they think that's it, that's the sign. It's not a common sight, but
people count magpies.
There's nothing. Sorry,
and that's people count magpies. That's a portent. one for sorrow,
Yeah.
two for joy, and all that. That's portents. If somebody breaks two things, they'll find a matchstick and break it in half because you break things in threes. That could be argued as being a portent. Breaking two things is a sign that you're going to break a third.
And there's also, I've heard the way that a satanic curse can work. If you curse someone, they'll laugh it off. You'll say, your life's going to be a disaster from now on because I've cursed you. They'll just laugh it off. And then suddenly they'll have an accident, which it might be a minor thing or it might be a near miss that on any other day they will have just dismissed, they'd have forgotten about. But they suddenly remember the curse. And even though they don't believe it, and then they spend all the time talking, no, it's nothing to do with that, and it's nothing to do with the curse, nothing to do. And the more they try and convince themselves it's nothing to do with the curse, the more they think about it. And then something else happens. A mirror falls off the wall, or they walk under a ladder and someone drops a can of paint on them. All these, or their car gets dead. Every little thing that happens, they suddenly think, "Oh shit, it's the curse." And they convince themselves of it because they're in that state of mind where they've been set, even though they don't believe it. They've been set up to expect something, and when something happens, the more effort they put into trying to dismiss it as it's just one of those things. It's nothing to do with this curse that was put on me. The more they kind of talk themselves into it. If you kind of get where I'm going with this,
I do absolutely. Well, a lot's been theorised that that's exactly the way that voodoo curses work.
Yeah,
it's psychosomatic responsive essentially. What they can't do is explain when the voodoo curse works and the victim was unaware that the curse had been placed. That's where it gets a bit more complicated. But yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm so even taking that perspective into account that he was being a bit condescending, basically, as well, yes, people are claiming these things and claiming their portents, but nobody's challenging them on it. That doesn't mean to say it's not happened.
Doesn't mean to say it's not happened, no. You must have heard of the Spanish Inquisition.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. We're going very Monty Python in this episode, aren't we?
We are, very much so. Did you know that it still exists?
Yes. I've heard this.
It's a very small office. It's much reduced. They tend not to arrest people, interrogate them, or kill them. But I think it's basically down to one guy, a priest, whose job it is, whenever someone reports a miracle in the Catholic world, he has to go and verify it. And I can imagine someone could make a good comedy about this. He's just got back from the Philippines where someone had reported a sighting of the Virgin Mary. And then he's only just got home. He's hardly unpacked. So sorry, you've got to go to Brazil, mate, out to the back of beyond where, a crucifix has started bleeding. Oh, for fuck's sake, it's just never any rest. He's just always traveling around the world, trying to follow up these, claims by very, very superstitious people living in the back of beyond. And he's got to go out there and try and work out if there's some kind of trick to it or whatever. Yeah, he's been doing the job for 30 years and he's never actually seen a miracle. But he still believes it. He's still got to believe it because he's a Catholic priest. Yeah.
I think if you want the comedy, you go from the crucifix that's bleeding and now you have to go to Warsaw because someone's found a cornflake that looks like the face of Jesus.
Yeah. I was fornicating out of wedlock with a harlot, and when I went to change the sheets, I saw that the bloodied stain had formed a perfect image of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Call the Vatican. And I drive a stake through my heart for being the evil one. There's also things that once someone reports something, people will claim to have seen it. There's a famous story about the Angel of Mons. It was a battle in the beginning of the First World War in Belgium, 1914. And a Welsh journalist was out there and he was kind of filled with patriotic fervour. And he wrote this story about ancient knights, 12th century knights. The ghosts of knights appeared and fought alongside the British soldiers and drove back the Germans and from their halted their advance. And he just made it up. But when he got back to England, people were always coming up to him and saying, "Oh, yes, my son was at Mons and he saw that. He saw the ghosts coming to fight alongside them." And he's I just made this shit up,
Yeah.
But as a kid, obviously we were all very groomed towards being future soldiers. They were being groomed to take part in the next battle of the Somme or Arnhem or whatever bloody turning point in history they're going to send us out to. And we get these war comics. And I remember one of the stories was about the Angel of Mons, and it was, they reported it as if it was true. These ghosts coming to fight alongside British soldiers.
So bringing this back round to our report from Livy. So it's not even. So it is often described this as Livy reports that phantom ships were seen gleaming in the sky. No, Livy has reported that other people reported they saw phantom ships gleaming in the sky. Just to be more accurate. Yeah, all right. He's a bit dismissive of it, perhaps. But do you think there's any benefit in looking into this as an actual UFO case, then?
I mean, how much material have we got to work with? I mean, if we've just got this statement by Livy,
this reference, that's it.
That's
the
it.
only
So
place this
we can
comes
say
up.
Someone claims they saw something. They might have seen something. They might have seen an odd shape. They might have seen some sort of aerial phenomenon, and decided that that's what it was. Maybe been a bit alarmed by it. Something gleaming in the sky, but it wouldn't have been anything man-made in the sky in those days, apart from a beam of light. Yeah. Or even a beam of light. Because all they had was fire, didn't they? They had candles and fire. They had no means of projecting a beam.
They had lenses, telescopes back then.
Could they project a beam, like a torch beam?
Theoretically. Not for any real distance like we can do now. But
no,
it's potentially. But we're talking. I mean, it's almost like quite a specific description: phantom ships gleaming in the sky. No, it's obviously seen. I mean, to me, it's obvious that this person has reported seeing a non-terrestrial craft. He's saying it's a ship. It's not. He's not saying I saw a weird shaped cloud. He's not saying I saw some light that I didn't recognise. He's saying I saw a ship gleaming in the sky. Now that screams to me metallic craft.
That screams to me trick of the light. The sun behind the cloud creating a certain effect, or.
Well, sadly, we can't go back and ask Livy
No.
what his source was for this.
No, but
or can we?
Well, the idea. I mean, the idea of ships in the sky. I mean, where did that come from? If they hadn't seen anything like that, if these are people who had never considered that human flight was possible in any way, shape, or form. Where would they get the idea of seeing a phantom ship in the sky?
Well, that's where it gets really
that they couldn't explain.
Because most ancient religions will talk about celestial beings coming down in strange craft, chariots of fire, on burning shields. This like across pretty much every ancient religion talks about these celestial beings coming down in this manner.
I mean,
so but you say where would you get the idea from? It wouldn't be an uncommon idea.
I mean, burning shields could be a meteorite shower, couldn't it? Just see these things flitting across the sky.
But they're talking about these celestial beings, these angelic beings, arriving on them.
Well, yeah, then they're getting a poetic license. They've seen a light in the sky. And also, these people wouldn't have known how vast the sky was, would they? They wouldn't have had any concept of light years or the kinds of distances that stars might be away. They would have seen them as fairy lights in the sky. I think when people first took flight, when the Montgolfier brothers first sent up a balloon with people in it, they were worried that it was going to disturb heaven, that God was actually just up there in the clouds. So they had to think of it. And then when they came down again, said, no, there's nothing up there. They had to think of a new place where heaven might be.
Well, this is the kind of the point I make is you said, like, where would he get the idea that, and we're assuming it was a he, who's reported these phantom ships. Where would they get the idea of them? Because people didn't have the power of flight. Well, no, they would only have to look at their religion for where people would get the idea for that. But there we go. Any final thoughts or conclusions on Livy's report there? Is it one you just dismiss completely?
No, I think Livy's been very Titus Livius has been very, very thorough in his documenting of what has been reported. He's just made a list, hasn't he? He's not elaborated on them in any kinds of way. In fact, they're not even separate sentences, are they? Just delineated by commas, and then this, and then that, and then this, and then that.
Yes, he's made a list of things to be scorned. So he's certainly not doing it from an unbiased perspective.
No.
Maybe he's part of the establishment trying to keep us down and keep these things quiet, mate.
There is that, I can imagine, just like we today, that a conspiracy theory could take hold and create a movement and create dissent based on, some religious. In those days, it would have been a religious kind of difference. Do you know when this was written?
Yes, 218 BC.
Oh, 218 BC. So it's too early for the Romans to be worried about Christians, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're not worried about that threat, but I can imagine there were all sorts of other, religious fanatics who could start a movement, who could tell you that the emperor is actually a lizard, that he's not human.
Well, I think in the absence of any other details, I take the report as read. I mean, it's there listed with other relatively mundane things that no doubt did happen. All right, it might not have been the portent, but I don't see that as a reason to rule out whether or not it actually happened. But what do you think, listeners? Did Livy, was he right to be scornful and dismissive of such claims? Is Neil right, or am I right? Who's right, or is it something else? Absolutely, completely. I had no idea where I was going with that, Neil. Did it show?
You just started a sentence with no idea how you were going to end it.
Never do that on this show. Anyway, so do let us know what you think about this interesting bit of history via the usual means. You can contact us through Facebook or through Twitter by searching Aliens Explored. You can get in touch by emailing us, aliensexplored@gmail.com. Or if you join our Discord channel, which I never mentioned last week, Neil, then you get access to our exclusive Discord server where you can discuss this and other subjects with like-minded people. Go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/Aliens Explored, to have a look at the tiers and find one that suits you. I'll tell you what will suit you, Neil. You like your rock and roll, don't you?
I do.
Well, next week we are going to be talking about the pop sensation that is Blink 182, and specifically the member of the band Tom DeLonge, who helped form To the Stars Academy and their connection with UFOs. So you don't want to miss that one.
We don't. No, rock and roll and spaceships. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You've got my attention.
In the meantime, keep looking at those ancient reports for any signs of UFOs, and of course, keep watching the skies. Take care for now.
Catch you later. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Aliens Explored is a Figo Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter and Facebook by searching Aliens Explored or visit aliensexplored.com.